Thank you everyone for joining us today. We are joined by Aaron Nozbisch. He is the founder of BREZ, a low-dose cannabis drink. The company reached 28 million in revenue in 2024, and in Q1 of 2025, over 13 million. When did you first identify this entrepreneurial drive in yourself? Because it sounds like you started a company when you were 13.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was young. My dad was two things, which is kind of crazy because now I'm in the weed business and one of the largest drug dealers in the country, which is crazy. it's, it's a huge achievement. My dad was an ATF agent, so alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So kind of like FBI, but more like the guns and the
Is it
alcohol.
For the TTB? Did they work for the TTB or?
So funny. That's a good question because now I do a lot of the TTB stuff with the beverage business. But no, they work together. So the ATF and the TTB separate agencies, but they work together. So it's TTB like Tobacco and Tax Bureau or something, or Tobacco Tax Bureau.
Yeah.
ATF is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and now explosives. So ATF is more of like the federal agent side of like enforcement for people who have guns that they shouldn't have, or explosives, or they're in some funny business that they shouldn't be in. So he was a special agent for the government, or an undercover agent. So he would, like cool things about my dad, like he would have like, he'd have 5 different IDs with like different names on them. It's just super crazy. And then, we'd come home and he'd have like guns in the kitchen sink all tied up with the ammo taken out of them that he collected the night before at 4 a.m. and he has to drop off at night. So a really weird experience. But the kind of the interesting part about, so he would do that, but then on the side, he was an entrepreneur, and more of like a hustler kind of entrepreneur. Like he was very much a wheeler and dealer. Like he had, he would buy semi trucks of like overstock goods from Brookstone, for example, which was like a home living company, and get it, and then he'd sell it on eBay, and he'd have his kind of friends and family sell it on eBay and give them a percentage of the sales. So he was always like wiring cool little opportunities together. And he was very good at like the actual hustle, willpower side of entrepreneurship, which is like the go sell, go make the money kind of thing. Or another thing, he had a fishing rod company, and we would go do fishing shows, like fishing trade shows. And he would take me with him. And so I was in these trade show environments all the time where I would just see him selling fishing rods and selling fishing gear and learning, and then I would practice selling. And the nice thing about trade shows is you're kind of like, you're stationary where a constant flow of people are coming by you. So you just have an opportunity to do repetition. And just like any skill set, that's kind of like the key to becoming good at it. And so I was able to learn very quickly how to sell, how to talk to people, how to drive value for people, how to understand what people want, and how to serve them in that regard. So I learned the skill set of sales and entrepreneurship and communication very young. And then when I was 13, I started a clothing company, which was really not a clothing company. It was kind of just like T-shirts. And I would design these designs on Photoshop, and then I would send them to a printer, and then they'd make it for me. And I set up a MySpace store, and back then it was called Big Cartel, which was like the early form of like Shopify. And I put my clothes on there, and then I would sponsor MySpace bands and send them clothes, and they'd wear my shirt in their photo, and then that would drive initial sales. And so, my dad gave me about $300 to start my first business, buying a bunch of shirts that I paid him back from when I sold the shirts. And so I got into it very young, and then I just kind of like compounded it from there. And I was into the internet very young. So that, and maybe one other piece there is like I saw entrepreneurs like my dad and like somewhat similar entrepreneurs in the Midwest sphere, but like all the entrepreneurs I was actually paying attention to, and what I thought an entrepreneur was all the guys in San Francisco and Silicon Valley. So like I was looking through the computer at the Steve Jobs and his different events, or Musk, or like all these different tech companies through that big San Francisco boom. So like I'm kind of like 13 in my upstairs bedroom in the cornfields. So this is like what I thought entrepreneurship was, and so, I was just dumb enough to think that maybe I could be one of those guys one day.
So you've had many different companies. What would you say, like the through line that connects like all your entrepreneurial work? Like what is it? Is it the love? Is it this like regenerative, like, is that the mantra that keeps you going, that connects it all?
It's actually what a term I call conscious innovation, consciousness innovation, or conscious innovation. And the way I think of it, I learned this, not specifically the term, but the idea from Steve Jobs. And I mean, like, think about it, right? Like, it's like there's like a piece of glass that like will let me like teleport to all kinds of other places. I can communicate with all kinds of other people. I can pull information back. Like, and the thing about consciousness is consciousness, for lack of a better description, is kind of like the felt experience around you. Like it's your perception of reality around you, and there's kind of an interplay between your perception of it and what it is, because like how you see things affects how they are, kind of thing. It's like if you take like I'm happy today and everything's for my benefit today, it kind of affects how everything feels. And so, so the reason I say that is like this is such a reality breaking technology. It changed how the conscious experience of humanity is. And so, I never wanted to be like an aerospace engineer, and I never wanted to be like, and like I didn't. There was not really out of all the. I wasn't like an AI necessarily like coder technician. I wasn't as talented as a lot of the other guys were. And so like when it came to like the last frontiers of business opportunities, and again, like 13-year-old Aaron's paying attention to Musk and Jobs and thinks that's what entrepreneurship is. So the way my perception always has been for entrepreneurship is that if I'm going to spend my time on anything, it needs to be on the thing that's going to change humanity or further it and be aligned with that. So a lot of the things that I would call like last frontiers, like exponential technologies, are not things that I was necessarily more skilled to do. But what I was really good at was communication and people, and with the without sounding like a narcissist, like I was aware of myself, and I was interested in self improvement and esoteric teachings and religions, and like even the Christianity that I grew up with. It's a lot of like consciousness, and then as you kind of like stack that through like different forms of learning. And my ex-wife, she was a travel writer, so we traveled the world a lot. And so the thing about travel is you teleport yourself to these like new places where everyone thinks different and acts different. So you kind of see these different frames of consciousness. So going back to your original question, I think that like I'm very interested in the idea of conscious or consciousness innovation, meaning like innovating on the felt experience of being a human, or the collective experience of being a human, with the engine of love and service. So the way you say that is like, and more like put that to terms and BREZ, it's like people right now in reality, and have been for a while, it's changing real fast. But alcohol is like kind of like the core drug of like of like humanity, which is crazy because it's like an old drug. It's not a very good drug, and like it's not that it doesn't have a place. Everything has a place, I'd say, but it's not a very good drug. It's not very conscious. It's not very helpful. In fact, it's an unconscious drug. It makes you less aware, and because it pulls your body in. It makes your brain work slower. It makes your your reactions are slower, and so it's making you less aware. So my point with that is, what I think is, if you take like an objective view of what society looks like, and you identify something like alcohol, and you can say, hey, this is why we're doing this. This is why we're drinking it. This is why, and I used to drink a lot of alcohol, and I don't drink as much now. But like, why are we choosing that? What benefits? And because people aren't doing it because they're dumb. They're doing it for something specific. And why are they doing it? Because they want to find relief, because they want to find connection, because they want to feel maybe a little less social anxiety. They want to feel, a little bit of the weight of the world taken off their shoulder ultimately. And so then like I asked, so the way I approach business in general and the way I approach BREZ is like, what is like that fundamental mechanism that is people are actually wanting, that is actually good for them? Like it's coming from a high integrity desire. Like the desire for relief is not a bad thing. Another way I've said this is like, in the past, culture kind of has this weird association with feeling good equals being bad. And that's just not true. There's lots of things that you can do that feel good, that are good. If you eat a salad, or you go for a workout, or you go hang out with some friends, and, you have some special moments, or you create something. So, but a lot of the pleasure culture has been, or even party culture, or like there's this association that doing things that feel good, it has to equate to being bad. So the way I think about conscious innovation is, if you can take something like alcohol, which is a good idea, a good purpose, a good intent, but is resulting in a negative thing, if you can replace that with something that was good feeling, good relief, good intent, but actually was good for you, at least not harmful to you, then you could kind of shift the experience of the individual in a very significant way. You put them in like almost a different timeline of their life. It's a big shift in their existence. And if you do that for enough people, you shift society and you shift culture. And if it's rooted in love and it's done with integrity, it becomes a net positive outcome for all of humanity. And I think that is like an innovation upon consciousness. And so I try to approach not just the products that we make, but the brand that we distribute, the ideology that we distribute, which is essentially that as in that way where can we can we take a moment to be mindful of how things are and find better ways to do them? And I think that also kind of roots in that same San Francisco tech entrepreneur way of thinking.
Yeah. It's a lot there to unpack, I think, with the, conscious innovation and just changing how people conceive of the world and change their perspective. You're actually, calling people to change their perspective or to reconceive of the world as they know it. And it is true that a lot of things, I agree with you that people associate with feeling good have any kind of like luxury or indulgence. It has like a bad association. It's like you eat too much or you drink too much during the holidays, that's like bad. Just because I think the foundation of, especially in the United States, is Puritan. So it's everything should be like, hard and, there's just these
Totally.
Puritan values that really seep through in our culture. And I don't even, it's the first time that I'm really talking to someone, a lot of people are trying to bring memories to life or reconceive of an occasion or be inclusive. I think this is the first time really talking to someone that's trying to change humanity through changing people's consciousness. And I feel like that's a very different proposal from just like, your normal CPG products that are out there.
Totally.
And
and it's a little adaptation of that. I'd say it's less about like changing their consciousness. It's more about like meeting them in their consciousness and like providing them, here's another option that like is just better and will you consider it? And when you show them that, like when you so the way you say that is like, hey, this does everything that alcohol is going to do for you, and it's not going to make you feel bad the next day, and you're going to sleep better than you would. Give it a shot, And so then they have that experience, and that changes they change their consciousness through that essentially intent to know. It's like there's a quote I think I like. It's like intent precedes insight, which is that you have to intend for something that could be true for then it to become true. And so, so it's like, if you're willing to try this drink that might be able to give you everything you want out of alcohol and not come with the cost. So then that like willingness and openness and that like self-awareness, like it allows people to then change their own consciousness. So it's kind of like seeding like new ideas of innovation into like the field of like, and these are kind of funny words. I'm sure you can say it a lot of different ways, but like it's like seeding better ways of being into humanity and then letting people choose. So it's not really like kind of manipulating or forcing anyone's choice. It's more so just like, hey, here's something to consider. Yeah, and the thing, like, what's the thing of what happens with good things? Like if you find a really cool restaurant that like is really good and it surprised you, like you're probably gonna tell your friends. It's like the natural effect of good. Like humans naturally want to spread goodness and like share in the ideas and the wealth. Not always, but they want to kind of share the good things. And so the idea is if you kind of like really look at the existing like systems of existence and the current state of consciousness, especially when like technology is changing how we perceive the world around us, and you can create like essentially improvements to the experience of being a human based on where we're at, then those will kind of naturally spread quickly and effectively. And I think that's a key, especially if you supercharge it with like tools like the internet, where you can kind of spread ideas much more quickly. And I think that's kind of a lot of how I think of business and life, is that if you can come up with innovations that are more loving to humanity, more loving to yourself, more loving to everyone. So it's less about, it's because I'm kind of in the deep end of the pool here, but I'm going to finish this idea, which is like if you really know yourself well enough, then like what part of me is also the same part of you, or everyone else. And if you're going to pick one thing, why not pick yourself? So it's kind of like self knowing thyself is kind of a vehicle of like knowing the collective.